Okay, so this is a 2000 Polaris Expedition. So far, not very fond of this machine, but some of you are aware of this device here. This is the shifting mechanism for reverse. This actually has to move. This has to move backwards. Sorry about the camera stuff, but anyway, this has to move backwards for you to push down on the shifter to shift it into reverse, and that's operated from the override button, the yellow button up there. Well, they made this flunky HVAC modified piece of junk thing that cost Polaris about $16 to have manufactured by a company. I shouldn't mention names, but anyway, nevertheless, this goes on here, and this actuates this thing into reverse. Well, Pollock only made a handful of these for Polaris. There's only 10 applications in the marketplace for this thing, so there isn't any available that I've found. Even in the used market, they're bad. So basically inside of this thing is a bunch of traces and some gear drives and a little motor over here on the side, and it's everything but watertight. So you can imagine, being this low on the bike, that it's gonna have some tendencies to be compromised. So today's mission is to get rid of this piece of junk and get something that will actually work on this thing, an actuator of some kind, without having to reach down here with the exhaust pipe right here, burning your hand underneath the fairing and all that junk. So that's what my goal is here. Try to keep this as short as possible. But I'm a pretty crazy fabricator. So I could come up with some pretty interesting stuff on this one if I'm not careful. So anyway, we're going to get into this. I'm not sure if I'm going to push or pull or push, so that's kind of what we're up against. Okay, so here's the next step of this thing. These switches now, I'm not going to say that's what you got to use, but this is what I'm using. The actuator, I bought this on Amazon. It's a half inch stroke actuator. They'll do 8 pounds, which is going to be plenty enough in that. And I measured that, it's 2.2 pounds on the actual the movement stroke of the shaft that we're moving, on the lever we're moving. So you have 12-volt source. This switch is momentary, forward or backwards. It springs back to neutral every time. So you have to do this crossover. So you're going to wire these 6 terminals like this. Power source comes into the center ones. Nothing else connects to those. You cross power from this left terminal to the right terminal, from the right terminal to the left terminal, like that. So when you click it forward, positive, negative. When you click it backwards, it's positive, negative. So let's see if this thing's going to work. Haven't even tried this yet, so I'm confident that we got this. So this is going to be going into reverse right here. Okay, strokes out, strokes in. This has an IP rating, water dust proof. Doesn't look like it's going to be heat proof, so we're going to have to do some heat shielding around that exhaust pipe there that's 3 inches away from this. So again, this is basically, you know, you've got your switch out, you switch in. This comes with a couple neat little clamps here. One clamp here, one clamp here. I don't know if we're going to use that or not. I have access to a mill and a lathe here, so we could probably get pretty funky as far as what we really want to do. We want to keep it as simple as possible and reliable as possible. So essentially this thing in the end is going to get mounted up on the fairing near the fuel tank someplace. I know it's not convenient like that. It should be hooked up to the push button, but the front hubs are hooked up to the push button. The override is hooked up to the push button. There's a bunch of other stuff hooked up to the push button. I didn't want to put a cross relay in there and draw any more juice through that than I needed to, so I went against that, and we're just going to add this differently. It's not much different than, you know, any other bike. You know, even most bikes you have to pull in a lever and pull the brake in, flip the lever or whatever. On some of the Yamahas, they actually have a a lever that you have to turn. So there's a secondary motion to get it into reverse no matter what. So let's see about putting this thing into motion. Okay, so next step here is you took this bracket off here, took this 10 millimeter off of here, put a roll pin in this one. Took a little figuring out where everything lines up here with this actuator. And I cut this piece of aluminum here and 2.38 of an inch here. Drilled that out, kind of chiseled this little plate out real quick, and then put a stainless bolt on there. Kind of show you how this is going to look when we get it all together here, if I can do this one-handed. Oh boy. And this is going to go on here about like that. Everything's kind of just a slip fit at this point in time. I'll put a spacer nut underneath this and then a locker on the outside and then trim that bolt down when I'm done. So, here's your switch. I got this hooked up to a little battery out here. So, let's see. This is forward gear here. And that's reverse. And then back to forward again. Forward, reverse. That's a pretty slick setup for under, I think I got a whopping 30 bucks into this right now. That's it. $30. And that's about right. Is you know, from looking at the contract that I seen there with Polaris, their contract with the outfit that made that HVAC, I'm going to say that over it again, HVAC, that looks like the same dampers that are in cars. Some of them are vacuum, some of them are electric for opening and closing the dampers for heat and air conditioning. Same kind of thing. Some of those are actually made for fire dampers in buildings and stuff. I mean, it's just ridiculous. So this here's you know, 10 millimeter, 12 volt. I can't see. It doesn't really tell how much, you know, strength it has here, but anyway, it's what I've got. So it's a 1/2 inch stroke. I think it's like 0.47 or something like that. And it took a little finagling in. There's also a little bit of slack here too. So if you take this loose on the end up here, you got about a 1/4 inch of slack, so you can fine tune that if you need to. Now it's a no-brainer. I think we actually lost some weight. So I'm going to wrap this up here with some heat guard. I might just wrap the whole thing because some of the plastic's gotten cooked up here. I've got some, so I'll just wrap that up all the way back to here. And then get that done. All right, well, anyway, hopefully that helps some of you guys. And again, remember the cross polarity on these switches. So you need a double pull, double throw, momentary switch. So that's it. All right, guys, there you go. So here's a finished product, mounted in place with lube and anti-seize and everything else that needs to be there. And I mean, it's, you know, pretty much cut and dry. So now all I have to do is figure out a place to mount that, and probably right up here on the back of the mound, or probably on the left side away from the throttle cable. It's been a long ways coming on this thing. Gone through this thing from pretty much top to bottom. Now we got to do is figure out these front locking hubs. Wish me luck.